Hello everybody and welcome to another episode of our podcast. My name is Emma and here today I have a special guest with us. Her name is Dr. Regina Murphy and she is Associate Professor at the DCU Institute of Education and one of the keynotes at the 9th International Symposium of Music Pedagogists here in Slavonskom Brodu, Croatia. She will share some interesting facts about her professional journey and her talk on the symposium. So welcome, we are delighted to have you here.
Thank you.
Let's start from the beginning. And can you tell us something about your professional journey?
That's a really interesting question because normally people go straight to their CV when they answer that question. But as we're talking about music education, a neighbor of Croatia, a Hungarian, Zoltán Kodály, said, when does the music teacher learn? And that's 9 months before the birth of the mother. So when I think about my career, and I really think, of course, it started before I went to school, in a way, because my mother used to teach and she loved teaching music as part of her school teaching. And she loved choirs and she made sure that all in my family, there were a lot of us, that we all learned instruments at different times. So the household could be quite noisy from time to time. There was the brass instrument phase, and the string instrument phase, and of course piano. And my sisters and I argued over whose time it was. And my older sister always said she was more important for piano time. She did specialize in it. And I think within that tradition, then there was quite a range of musical styles happening in a household where education was seen as very important. So I think I had lots of ambitions to be different things, but the idea of going to Dublin to study teacher education and having the opportunity to specialize in music and education as part of my undergraduate degree, that was quite a defining experience. Maintaining piano, studying that concurrently, and participating in choirs and learning all the usual musical skills. So that was that journey. And then how does music continue to develop? You're not going to get a chance to ask a question because I'm going to keep talking. But one of my music education lecturers in Dublin, Colm O'Clerig, he was very interested in Kodály method. And that was in the rather dark days. Will I say the date? It will make me sound so old. But it was the 1980s, right? And he wanted to organize a conference to bring Hungarian lecturers to Dublin. And I was a willing volunteer student, and we said, we'll do anything to make this happen. It was summertime, and we were going to help out with this. The first thing that was needed was a visa. And when we went to the Department of Foreign Affairs at the time, they didn't know how to issue a visa to Hungarians because it was like they had never visited before. And it had to be a working visa. So I can remember being at that office with my lecturer and we were trying to make the case that they should come. Anyhow, eventually those Hungarians came. We ran the summer school. We did all the things that students do when they're helping, you look after all the visitors and so on and so forth. And we did that for a couple of summers. It was very successful as a course. One of the indications of its success is that the Kodály Society in Ireland are still very active and they still have courses every year, and I help them organize it a little bit, because they are much younger people who do all that work now. But following that, I started my teaching career. I was still teaching some piano. I taught a little bit of guitar, occasionally just to children in my school, because it was nice to have them engaged in different things. And I did choir, and I used to do that with the children before school. And then subsequently went to Hungary and did some of their summer courses there as well. And then went on to do my master's. And somewhere along the way, I ended up going to New Zealand. Now, how is that significant? These days, all young people travel. It was very unusual then. It took me nearly a whole year to save for the fare. But what was interesting going there was that people spoke English. They looked like me, a lot of the Europeans. They looked like Europeans. There were Maori people as well, the native people. But I used to feel kind of strange, like I'm talking to people who look like me and look like Europeans, but there's this whole other culture here that I don't know anything about. And it really made me think deeply and reflect on my identity in a new way, to think about what it was to be different, to be a little bit of outsider, because I came from Ireland and people would sometimes make jokes, say you drinking all day or something, whatever. So you have all those things that you experience as an outsider. And at the same time, I was an insider because I was now connected with a larger family of people and white Europeans, spoke English, all of this. But it definitely changed my perception on a lot of things. So when I came back to Ireland and started to undertake research, it was with a different lens. I think I had understood something of the life experience of difference, the meaning of music in different cultures, and so on. And then, to make a long story short, I did my PhD on that. Because I had this curiosity, I think, when I came back from New Zealand about how everything worked in a way that I had never really thought about before. Like, how do we decide what children learn in school, and how do they learn? And what is the role of the different institutions, and who gets to go to music school and who doesn't? And because I had somehow experienced the not being a citizen in the same way in another country. So that really made me think about those things. And it kind of fostered my curiosity. And then, because of my practice at school, which was largely around choral work and some creative work around children writing their own operas, there are a lot of little bits to all of this. I ended up on a committee that was writing the new curriculum for primary schools. And there hadn't been another curriculum for about 30 years. And it had been written by an inspector previously, and now they were asking teachers to help write this curriculum. That was a real milestone in Irish education. So I started off as just a committee member, but I guess I had a lot to say, and I ended up being seconded, meaning, the department pays you and working in an office, and then writing more of the work. So that was for the document for primary music and all the guidelines for teachers, and that lasted about 30 years. In the meantime, I went on to teacher education and first organizing courses for teachers and all kinds of things. And then when our teacher education college merged with the local university to become a new faculty, I became the head of the School of Arts, Education and Movement, which had music and drama and art and PE with dance. And that was like, wonderful suite of all your favorite things. And we were one of 6 schools within a new Institute of Education. And that has proved very fruitful. It's a very vibrant place. There are a lot of academics everyone is interested in education, but from different perspectives. And we all have our thing. And then strangely enough, about 2 years ago, the department decided it was time to start rewriting the curriculum again. And by now I'm old and grey. No, I really am grey. But
and they said, and they said,
would you like to chair? So that was very nice. But coming back to it again and listening to all the voices of the younger people and the different influences, it has been very heartwarming. And it also makes me sit back a little bit and listen to what people are saying, because this process in Ireland now around curriculum is very consultative. They ask parents what they think. They ask children, they do a lot of research with children about their views of school, their views of education, and their experiences of things. And in my lifetime, it was the inspectors decided what happened. And they were the elite in the education department. And then it started to move towards, well, we'll ask teachers, but only those who will represent particular categories. And we'll get experts in. And now they're moving towards, well, we'll ask the children. And we'll ask the parents. And we will ask the inspectors as well. But we will try and democratically make sense of all these voices. So that has made for an interesting iterative process. So it's a slow process. Committees meet, they look at the feedback, they say, well, we don't agree with that feedback. We think the children need to do this. But yes, that idea, yeah, that's a good idea. So it's like that. And we try and work through that as democratically as possible. And then whatever version we have made goes back out for consultation. So there have been a couple of years of that. It's very respectful. Like, it's not, it's about once a month, but not that often. And there are quiet times, and there are teams looking at everything, and they consult the research and the literature, and we can point them towards work that we're doing. So, for example, my colleagues and I had done some work on playful music experiences and the importance of those, and for children's creative experiences, and we can direct them towards that kind of thing, or tell them about other initiatives in other parts of the world where they're doing wonderful things. And the head office is very receptive to that. So where does that bring me now? That's looking at new curriculum coming and being excited about that for schools. And that happens, that's only a small bit of work. The rest of it is the day job. Yeah. So will I tell you a little bit about the day job then, or what I...
You can tell me whatever you want.
And please stop me. So we teach student teachers. There are 400 students in the year. They have to learn how to teach every subject at primary level. I teach early childhood music as well, and I teach music to some of the general students and some specialist students as well on the program. And it's a very interesting experience, because at the start of the year, which is usually late August, the students come in and they're sitting on their chairs and they think, right, music. I've got to go to training. And I'm like, no, you have to be here. So every student, I think they love their autonomy, and it's important that they experience that at college. It's very important that they have a sense of being grown up and a sense that they don't need a teacher telling them what to teach, what to learn, what to study. But at the same time, we have responsibilities to make sure that they do follow the module, the course, the program. And so to get them to engage, it's a little bit of carrot and stick. Do you know that term? Yeah, the carrot and the stick. So sometimes it's the carrot. You know, this is so easy, you'll be able to do it and it'll make you healthy. And you'll be so efficient when you go on placement and everyone will think you're a beautiful teacher. Because when you sing, oh, your voice is so nice. And when you play, and these are, you know, and other times it's like, don't be late. This is the stick. You didn't submit your assignment. You might fail. You might have to repeat the year. So it's a bit of that. But mostly all the combination, we get them through. Yeah.
That's definitely similar. We have similar experiences here.
Yeah.
You talked about your journey, which was very interesting, and you started from very young age engaging in music, right? Could you tell us something more about what are the differences between back then, if I can say it that way, and right now, because the times are different, and now kids engage and students engage a lot of technology in their work. So what's your view on that?
Oh yes, the difference in those times. I think I could look at my childhood and say it was extremely in contrast with what happens now. We have the idea now in our policies around child voice, and that's not just, as I mentioned, in relation to the curriculum development, not just in relation to them speaking, but making sure they have that opportunity to be heard. But when I was at school, you did not speak at all. And if you had to speak, you had to recite something from memory, or you could be asked a lot of questions, and that could be very scary. And it was only with music and craft or sewing was where we had a different teacher, and it was a bit more gentle and you could breathe. So, but that's stark contrast. There's been a lot of development in between. So new legislation, reduction in pupil-teacher ratio and class size. Some would say it's a slow revolution. The Department of Education is more aware of how much they need to support teachers and support them in their professional learning. But all of that was kind of going one way, and then COVID happened. And COVID is like children's well-being, especially the senior primary and teenagers and students as well. And then we started this hyper-focus on technology, and technology was our friend, right? Now we can do Zoom, we don't need the students, we have them all online. Trying to teach music online. Oh, you should see me as like a circus artist. Then you can do all of these. And you say, did you hear that? And the response is nothing, sometimes. So that's very, that puts a strain on you as a professor or teacher. And for students, we worried a lot about their development. And even when students were present, I remember teaching and talking, and we'd have breakout rooms and all kinds of things with our Zoom facilities, and watching some students in their bedrooms as the light went down, in the afternoon. It's November, it's getting darker, and they've been sitting there looking at the screen. And I remember thinking, this is wrong. This is wrong. They're meant to be on campus, even missing their lectures on campus. but not in their bedroom all day, just on a screen and the light going down. And the other thing that strikes me about all of that time is that when I was teaching younger children, and even still with adult students, like, I used to feel if a child missed one day of school, I would really notice that as a teacher. I would notice that that child wasn't in that day and they missed the things we were doing, the fun things, the serious things, the playful things, but they missed it. And I can't recreate that if they're not here. And I had a very strong sense of that around students, that they're getting a kind of printout of life rather than real life experience. So my colleagues and I reflected on that quite a lot. We wrote a paper about it and we tried to explain our own struggles around trying to teach artistically online. I think we learned a certain level of skill, but it is very humbling because you then realize that you're maybe quite ineffective in some settings like that. And at the same time, I think in this post-COVID time now, when we do online meetings, maybe it's a little bit more integrated in our lives, where it's not such a big deal, I mean, for your generation and the use of mobile phones and chat, it's like, what's wrong with that? I just know when to put it away. But I think that's probably been the most significant thing. And at the same time, I think while we have learned to work with technology, it has also taught us how damaging it is. And aside from the obsolescence of technology and the built-in obsolescence, you'll get a year out of it and then it'll cost you another €500 or whatever. I think we're thinking more about the importance of the tactile, the engaged, the relational, the simple pleasures of experiential learning. And we're not as mesmerized by technology. Now we can use it fine. And it's a blessing sometimes, and other times it's a bane, but we're not totally dependent. We know what's of value.
We can connect that to the question, like, what do you think are some pros and cons about using technology? Because you talked at your you are a keynote speaker at the symposium, so that was one of your topics that you talked on, technology and AI, right?
Yes, well, I believe there's research that points to the reduction in children's level of creativity, where it had been, when they started to do these studies of creativity over the years, they said, it's increasing all the time. And then it kind of dropped. And at a certain point, there's studies in the US, and they correlate that with the introduction of the iPhone. Now, I haven't followed the latest in terms of that research now, but anecdotally, you would hear that people who work in the tech industry make sure their kids never have a phone. This is what you hear, because they can see how addictive it is. And some of the research around that as well, about the opportunity for bullying and opportunities, the damage of too much social media for children, and the accessibility is not so good. So about 10 years ago, our policies around technology were all about increase and make sure every child has this and they're connected and that. And then we had COVID, and then we're coming past COVID, and now we're thinking, maybe we don't need it as much as we think. But it's still very useful, and it's still amazing for connecting, and we love to use digital resources for teaching music as well, but to do it in a way that we are not hyper dependent on it, and that we can see its strengths and its possibilities, but that one knows when to step back as well.
That's really important. So how do you see the future of music education?
I hope it'll be exactly the same. Well, no, I mean, thinking about the future, there are lots of ways. When I say the same, I'd love if, of course, every child had the opportunity to learn an instrument in any form in depth. When I go back and think of my mother, and the brother wanted to play the tuba, yeah, we can get a tuba, or we can find ways, or you want to play the violin, and I know it's going to be hard to get you to piano lessons, but it can be done. And it's a beautiful thing to learn an instrument. And when a child figures out that they can control this and make sounds in whatever way, it's a very personal thing. And singing is very individual, because your voice box is not something that has come off a machine. It's very, our bodies are all completely different in terms of how the voice box works, how we get air, how we pump the air through it to make the sound, how we shape the sound, what we think about the sound, the emotional quality, how you learn techniques. And so that side I'd like to remain the same. But last thing I will say on that is that in schools we find a lot of teachers, and even in the play schools, they use a lot of screens with cartoon singing and so on. And they maybe use it a bit too much. So that is a kind of a new battle, in a way. That's the latest battleground. It's not the borders of the EU, it's the border between overuse of visual technology that displaces, again, the interaction. Yeah.
Are you working currently on some researches? Could you tell us something about that?
Yes, I've been involved a lot in the evaluation of creativity in schools and in music, as well as more broadly across the curriculum, and have written some reports on that and continuing to explore those ideas. So how children experience creativity and the limits and expanses of that, and how it's introduced to them, how teachers mediate it. And of course, at first they're typically very worried that they can't be creative. That's what we find. And then looking as well at the role of artists when they work with teachers and children. And that's a kind of new direction in Ireland, even though I know it's been the case in many jurisdictions up to now. The UK has a lot of work in that side of things. I think I mentioned learning about writing an opera with children, and that was, again, a number of years ago, but that was a lovely collaborative process of learning from people involved in production, vocal skills, songwriting, design, all kinds of things. And that kind of multi-dimensional way of learning is also very enriching, because every child finds their way in.
Yes, that's wonderful. I like that answer. Also, now we can I have some questions about Croatia. Is this the first time you're here, or have you visited?
This is my third time, but my first time in a professional capacity.
Oh, okay. First time at the professional? And
the other two times were holidays.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
How did you decide to come here?
Well, the first time we could thank Michael O'Leary, who runs Ryanair, right? And of course, he opened up all of these Eastern European cities to us, in a way, through creating these routes, knowing that there were a lot of people from Eastern Europe who wanted to go home, and come back from time to time, and maybe he could encourage others to go there. And it was late October, and this particular year, and it's kind of the last of any fine weather, and there was a special flight to Zadar. And we decided to go there and it was, as I say, there wasn't much light by then, but it was so beautiful. And we were so taken about, here's this beautiful European city that's just a couple of hours from home, really, and we don't know anything about it. And it had the beautiful coastline and the kind of rock that goes down at the beach. Have you been there?
Yes.
And there is an organ that's operated by the waves, and that's beautiful, and the boardwalk area for walking on. And then there's a church there, and I think that church is connected to an Irish saint. It's a very old church, but I think there hasn't been any kind of mass or anything said in it for a long time. But the beautiful buildings, I remember how the buildings were illuminated at night time. It was like a postcard. It was like a fairy story, actually. It was really, really nice. And the hotel we stayed in, there weren't many guests. And my daughter at the time, she was a bit obsessed with Irish dancing. And Irish dancing needs a lot of space and energy to travel. So she would dancing down along the corridor, the whole width of the corridor to practice, and thought it was lovely. But we swam in the water and everything, and I thought, wow, it's this nice in October. Can you imagine what it would be like in June? But we didn't get to go back to Zadar. We went to Dubrovnik another time. Why would you go anywhere else in the world when you have Dubrovnik and all the area around? We actually stayed in Savtat and further down the coast. And we also like to explore a little bit, so not just touristy things. So we drove to an inland town where you go through Herceg-Novi, I think, and Bosnia. And that was very interesting. And what is also so interesting is just looking at the geographical features and thinking, wow, this is amazing. Do people even know that these mountains are here and how fantastic they are? Why don't we learn more about these mountains and these rivers? And is it Trebenia? Is that one of those inland towns? I can't remember exactly. But yeah, and then Dubrovnik, of course. Dubrovnik is a film set, isn't it?
It was for the Game of Thrones, I think.
But it's just a film set anyway.
Yes. Oh, you thought? Sorry.
I mean, and it's just like so perfect. The perfect little garrison town, isn't it?
Yes. Sure. It has a lot of beautiful scenery, and you can see the sea, and it's just amazing.
Oh, yeah. Now, I can tell you, I'm not a strong swimmer. I rarely go swimming in the sea in Ireland because it's too cold, right? But we went out in those canoes that, and there's a whole group and canoed around the island. That was just amazing. That was really, really nice in a group, and just, I think the sense of art and culture that you experience in Dubrovnik. There are some lovely museums, and everything is so sensitive, and there's no silly shops with neon signs. It's just, there's a holistic sense of preservation about it that's very nice, that I think a lot of places could learn from as well.
I'm so glad that you enjoyed your stay at our coast, but I hope you have a nice time here as well. So how did you decide to come and be a keynote speaker here in Slavonski Brod?
Yes, I just woke up one morning and I said, right, where will I go? Yes, a colleague in music education invited me, and Croatian colleague, Blaženka, and I was really flattered by that. And you can't say no when someone invites. It's a real privilege. But I wanted to make sure that I understood aspects of Croatian music and educational context. Because I think there's nothing worse than someone coming in from outside and telling you what you should do or don't do, or that we do better. Because I think there's a lot of things we don't do very well, and there's an awful lot that Croatia does very well as well. And I saw that in the research or in the policies around inclusion, some of them were very progressive as well. Of course, the OECD likes to check all of these things with all the countries. And in a way, it's good because it keeps us on our toes. And I know that the ministries in Ireland like to make sure that we are being progressive with our policies. And we don't want to be the last country in the list, whatever it is,
Sure.
Whether it's for literacy, whether it's for inclusion, whether it's for mathematics. Funnily enough, they don't look at it enough for music, right? So you have to find that research in other places. But you can find some in cultural policy and see where the money is being invested and things like that. And then you have nice arguments. Do you know what they do in Croatia? They do all these wonderful things. Why aren't we doing that? So it's a great privilege to be asked then to speak, because that makes you learn more yourself, really. You hope that the people listening learn something too, but that's mostly you learn. So don't say that.
What do you think are some similarities in education here in Croatia and in Ireland?
I think we value it a lot. I think we are both countries well, Ireland isn't bordered in the same way, but we have a very big neighbour. And I think with the EU and definitely since Brexit, if our neighbour is going in a slightly different direction, do we go with them? So kind of politically, we're kind of friends with the US, but I think we've been kind of refinding our identity in mainland Europe and realizing that our connections there are where we share a value set. So I think that comes across in European policies as well. And I think the sense of cooperation is very good. And we can learn a lot from those things. Yeah.
Yes, sure. I think we can learn a lot of things among each other. Like we can learn a lot from Ireland, and maybe you can learn some stuff from us as well. Yes. So this is it. Like, I don't have any more questions that I've prepared, but if you wish to say something more, I'll be glad to listen.
Just thank you for the opportunity to speak about it. It's such a privilege to be here and to learn about Slavonskom Brodu and to learn about the Sava River and learn about just some of the history and the influences and things that happened in the Ottoman Empire and the impacts of that, because I think quite often our news is dominated as well in, obviously in the English-speaking world by news from English-speaking places. And that is a kind of colonization of another kind. But it's really helpful to think about our neighbours. We're not so far away. To think about the seas as the highways, not the aircraft, but the seas, and how people journeyed and connected through the seas, or how battles, people came to fight battles or to leave. They were the exit routes. And there's so much to learn still. And I hope to have more opportunities for that.
I hope so too. So thank you for coming. Thank you for being a part of our small podcast group, because we are just students who are trying to do our best here, and we wish you all the luck in your research and in your work as well. Thank you to our viewers as well for watching us, and you can see other episodes that are going to come out soon. Thank you for watching.